be joining you in a few seconds for the Asset Mastermind Thursday, August 29th. Hey everybody, it's Steve. This is the Thursday, August 29th Asset Mastermind, really our launch shoot. I don't know why I'm doing all this dating stuff. We don't officially launch until September 11th, but we're kind of doing a few to get the bugs worked out. So I'm not even sure. We've only got like 3 people in the room, but hopefully we get more. Anyway, so Asset Mastermind, and I'm going to distract myself while I look at what it's actually named for, because I forget what I called it. My computer system came up with some really beautiful acronyms, and I just forget what they are. Achieving success through systems, engagement, and training. Wow, doesn't that sound fancy? Yeah, I'm Steve Franco. I'm a real estate broker. I'm a wholesaler. I'm a landlord. I teach real estate. I've flipped a few houses. I'm getting into some self-storage and land development. But anyway, so let's cover today's topic, which is landlording. And the part of landlording, I want to come at it from the back end because I'm not sure, we'll go over numbers and data and stuff in a more formal class. But this is what you want to do with your tenants and what you don't want to do with your tenants. And the first thing that I want to bring up is the documentation. Okay, is how you pick a tenant. Let me start with that. And I shouldn't have done this ahead of time, but so how you pick a tenant. People are always complaining about landlords and overcharging and whatever. And you pick your tenant based on several factors. The first one is that they don't bring home 3 times the rent, or at least gross 3 times the rent. And by they, I mean the household. The first thing is, I don't do by the bedroom rental. There are some people who do phenomenal money by the bedroom. They have phenomenal by the bedroom businesses. I just don't have a lot of by the bedroom experience. I've always done it other ways. I always like to keep it as a unit that, you're all roommates in this house. Maybe you're sleeping together, maybe you're not, don't care. You're all equally on the hook. So we're going to talk about it as an apartment unit. The apartment unit, all of the earning people in the apartment should bring home 3 times the rent. And I've been searching for a waiver of notice words, and I'm tripping myself up here, so I'll be back here. And so that's the first thing. If they don't bring home 3 times the rent, or at least 2 times the rent, they're like some federal statistic, 90-something% more likely to fail. And if you think about that, what does that mean in real terms? Let's say the rent is $1,000 a month. That means they have to bring in $3,000 a month. It's like, oh my God, that's a huge difference. It is. And especially in today's economy, I get it. But let's do that, 2 times the rent is $2,000 a month. So if they bring home $2,000 a month, which I would say is thin, and the rent's $1,000, then their utilities are $200. So now they're at $1,200. Their car payment and their car insurance is another $200. So now they're at $1,400. Then they have to have another $300 a month in food. So now they're at $1,700. If they only bring in $2,000, okay, we fed them. We kept their car hopefully running if it doesn't break. And, really how much room do they have? Even at $3,000 a month, they don't have a lot of room. So the 3 times the rent rule, or 2.5 or whatever, is very critical. That's the first thing. Our landlord process, and my wife handles all of our management company, so she's much better at this than I am. But we have an interview. We don't even bring them to the house if they don't meet certain criteria. If they don't make 3 times the rent, if they've had an eviction, if they have criminal background, especially of certain categories, don't even come to my house. So we will have, and I don't know exactly, my wife could talk to this more specifically, but we have, let's say 100 people, you're posting out on Facebook, 100 people talk about wanting the apartment. Great, here's our form. and they fill out our form, and it asks them a bunch of stuff. About 50 people survive that. 25 of them don't even bother filling out the form because they see the questions, realize they're going to get out of the thing, and they don't bother. So we're down to 50 people. We started at 100, we're instantly down to 50. Then Kelly talks to them and does some other conversations and does some other research about talking to their landlords and whatever. And long story short, we go from 100 people to 20 people actually showing up to see the house. 80% of them, some number like that, have simply dropped off the radar. So that's, which is what you want. You don't not want that. You want to be dealing with as few people on your property as possible. Especially since some of those people, you don't want them knowing where the building is. Like, you've shown them pictures, but you said Barney Street, Wilkes-Barre, and here's some pictures. You're not telling them 29 Barney. You're telling Barney. Because who knows? They're on the internet. Who knows who they are? So they got to make the money. They got to have clean landlord-tenant backgrounds. You know, we were always saying, have you ever been evicted? And then we found some smart people who just simply hadn't shown up in court or had left before the date of the eviction. So technically, there was no eviction filed on them. So when they said, no, I was never evicted, they weren't lying. That doesn't mean an eviction wasn't filed on them, which is now our question. We now ask, have you ever been behind on your rent? Have you ever had to make payment arrangements with your landlord? Have you ever had an eviction filed on you? So that's another thing. They've had landlord issues. And I don't mean like, 20 years ago, but I mean like in the last several years. Why do I want them? We also talk during the screening process to their current landlord and one or two of their previous landlords. And don't believe them when they say, I don't know who my previous landlord was. Really? You lived in the guy's house for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you have no memory of who he is or where the house is? Sorry, don't believe you. Criminal background. And everyone has their line on criminality. But the first thing I'm looking for is money crimes and violent crimes. Are they check fraud mavens or, whatever? Or are they going to be a risk to me physically, liability, like, whatever? If you got into a bar fight 5 years ago, only incident in your life, don't care. If you get into 5 bar fights a year, okay, maybe becomes a question. If you were caught for pot possession, whatever, I probably don't care because pot's basically legal in most places anyway. If you were, conspiracy to distribute or whatever, I care. And everyone's line, you are in many states, and remember, I am simply a real estate broker and landlord in Pennsylvania. I am not a lawyer. But in many states, you can draw a pretty wide line on criminality. But where you can't draw a wide line on is your fair housing laws. Okay, so federal fair housing and state fair housing will vary. Whichever is more restrictive, i.e. more things you can't ask about, is the one that wins. Federal fair housing standards are, race, sex, creed, the usual stuff. Pennsylvania's fair housing law includes gender, orientation, marital status, and many other, marital status it's actually federal, but okay. But the point is you go with whichever one's more restrictive. What I tell people is when it comes to fair housing questions, don't ask, don't tell. There's a city in our area that has a rule of no more than 5 unmarried people in any apartment of any size. And I explained to them that at the time I was a landlord in their town, I don't feel I can honor that law. Why? Because I can't ask. Some mixture of boys and girls, men and women show up in front of me. I can't say, okay, who's related to who and who's sleeping with who, and do you have paperwork for your relationship? No, I'm not facing the other lawsuit because of this lawsuit or whatever. I'm just not doing it. And especially, I've never been caught by it, but there are people out there who are hunting for a lawsuit. And I have been involved with, not directly, but indirectly, what I call a sting, where we thought a landlord was disadvantaging people of color. So we sent a person of color in, and they were given a hard time. Then somebody that looks like me follows them, the next day, and all the other statistics on the person were the same, and the white person had no trouble. Sorry, so I have to stop my phone here. Let me just tell this person I'll call them right back. I'm so sorry. I just don't see who it is, so I can't tell whether I need to be urgently dealing with it. Okay, so in any case, so you want to stay away from any discriminatory. So number one, good backgrounds, good incomes. Credit, there are numbers. Okay, we used to say credit didn't matter because if you had good credit, you wouldn't be a tenant. We now have credit standards, 560, 640, somewhere in there is usually a good number. The lower the credit, the more your security deposit can be. And there's whole metrics on that. I'm not going in detail here. I'm just saying that you want to have a credit standard. You want to have an income standard. You want to have a lot of other things. You want to try to visit them. If you get late enough in the process, you want to try to visit them in their homes. See how they're living now before you commit. And you want to be very careful when you commit and what you commit to. One of the greatest examples is I had a landlord who he got a lot of demand on the apartment. He advertised it for $1,200. Got a lot of demand. So people started showing up and he started saying $1,400. You can't do that. Once you call a price, that's your price. You can't just suddenly jerk it because then someone's going to complain you discriminated against them or whatever. The next thing you have to do is, or consider at least, is you have to consider honestly what it is you're presenting as an apartment. And this is where a lot of landlords become slumlords, and unintentionally. I will tell you, there was one property I did it too. I bought a house at tax sale, yada yada. Didn't have a lot of money. I did a ass renovation. Just did. It just was. I did the minimum to make it legal. The building inspector was kind of squinting and letting stuff be okay, and I got horrible tenants. And finally, just went and borrowed the money and did it right, and all of a sudden the tenant problems kind of went away. And do it right doesn't mean granite tile. It doesn't mean expensive. It means, in that case, it meant painted floors, nicely painted walls, just a place when you look around, you're like, oh, I could see my 20-year-old self being okay here. You want to present a good product. Good is relative to the price of the apartment. Good is relative to the neighborhood. If you're in an Upper West Side part of New York or something, no, that's a whole different level of good than if you're in Brooklyn. So, sorry, I don't know New York neighborhoods. I hope I remember them correctly, but whatever. You want to be clear about what the property comes with. Does it come with appliances? If the appliances break, whose fault is it? Who fixes it? Laundry, yes, no. If the laundry machines break, whose fault is it? Personally, I don't give them dishwashers. I do mostly B-level apartments. They don't get dishwashers. They don't get laundry equipment. If there is laundry equipment, it's inherited appliance, and we don't maintain it. It's there because the last tenant abandoned it. What utilities are included? Personally, I don't like, and I don't think I have any. I don't do tenant-controlled landlord-paid heat. I almost never do landlord-paid heat. But if I do, I'm the one choosing the temperature. I try not to do water. Water is the one that's a small enough bill. It kind of depends on the building. But electric and heat, I almost never want to pay the tenant's bill. And there's lots of reasons for that I'll cover later. But you want to be very clear what it is, and you want to make sure that, frankly, they can't run it up. I've seen so many buildings where it was landlord-paid heat. Person on the first floor set it to the temperature they wanted it at, because that's where the thermostat was. Person on the third floor is naked with their windows open while it's snowing outside because heat rises, and there you go. And the landlord ain't making for money because, well, it's all going out the window, literally. So you want to be clear about who's in charge of what. You want to be clear about who's in charge of mowing the lawn, shoveling the snow. I always have snow coverage and grass coverage in the tenant's required items, Even if we do it, even if we mow the lawn, it's on their list. Even if we shovel, it's on their list. Why? First of all, because I try not to do it. But second of all, liability. If you're responsible for snow and ice and you go there and you shovel, and then later in the day it warms up, snow turns to water, water goes across the sidewalk at night, the sidewalk freezes again, and now you have a slip and fall. Well, it was your job to prevent that slip and fall. It was your job to make sure that ice didn't happen. Where, and this is where I'm not a lawyer, but whereas if the snow and ice is in the tenant's lease requirements, even if you do it, you're doing them a favor. But if there's a slip and fall into the tenant's lease requirements, yeah, it could still be a lawsuit, but it's less likely it's going to win. Again, I just have to check messages here because, sorry, my daughter's waiting for me. My daughter is just checking with me or something. All right, apparently I'll be getting a call from Home Depot soon. Yippee. The joys of being a landlord. Anyway, so tenant criteria. They should make 3 times the rent. They should have a clean background, clean criminal background, clean landlord background. And when they come to your apartment to do the walkthrough, you have the right to let your gut rule to a certain extent, but you have to be very, very careful with that. Case in point, discrimination, and I'll say even away from discrimination. Now, there was a magistrate, a county lawyer, or a county magistrate, or other states call it small claims court judge, who came and spoke to a real estate investor group I was at, and he said, "I want you to discriminate." He said, "No, not big D discriminate, not discrimination law." He's like, "But I want you to be careful." He's like, "If you're more careful, I'll see you less in my court, and I'll have less bad people in my town." And that's where the adage my mother taught me when I was tiny and she owned a little building is, how'd she sort it? If they feel wrong, keep digging. You'll eventually find out if there's a reason why. And this isn't, oh, they look low end. This isn't, oh, they look poor. This is, if there's something just feels off, continue your research. Now, they may be perfectly fine. You might be wrong. Your gut will probably be wrong 95% of the time. But it's worth to keep it looking, to look at their background, to visit their place of where they live now, to talk to more former landlords, to just see what else you can dig up. This is way before social media. Now we can see everything about them. And again, you can only choose to not rent for certain correct reasons, but you want to know what kind of tenant they're going to be. If they're always people packing their apartment and, living like not well in terms of how they keep their apartment, that may not be the tenant for you. Here's what you can't do. You cannot steer them. Very well-known regional landlord that I know, he's been owning over 100 units since 1981. This guy has done, 50 years of over 100 units. He knows a lot. And this family came to him, and the kids were wild. They were running up and down. They were banging on the walls. This is at the showing, when you, in theory, are on your best behavior. And he said, I think you might be more happy in my other building where there are more children. This is more of an older person live here. Now, you cannot have this is more of an older person building unless it's a true over 55 community and there's rules as to what defines that. But what he meant was, this is mostly old people. The kids are going to be bored. Sure, in the back of his mind was, oh my God, the old people are going to kill me if I let these kids move in. But that's not what he said. Before he got home, driving home from the showing, his lawyer said, hey, bring me a $10,000 check. Why? Did you say this to this person? Yes, I did. That's legally steering. It's a federal crime. Don't do it. Now bring them money so they'll go away. Something that simple. Redlining, steering, anything like that you can't do. But, You can't advise them as to what their life choices should be, whether or not they meet your criteria. Make sure your criteria are legit. So now we've covered what makes a tenant likely to be good. I guess that's it. And after that, you can't be like, I don't like Trump supporters. I don't like Biden supporters. I don't like, Catholics. You can't do that. That's none of your business. That's it. I have in my lease, or at least I think my wife might have taken it out, but we had in our leases for years, white facing out when it's on your window fixtures, your window coverings. We don't care what your white is. I'm trying to avoid sheets and towels and ugly stuff like that. But, if you want to have whatever your decoration of choice is in the apartment, great. The neighbors don't need to see it. My building doesn't need to look like a tenement because you're putting towels in your windows because you won't go to Walmart and buy a $5 window curtain. Heck, use a shower curtain. I don't care. The next thing is what you have in your landlord-tenant agreements, and this is critical. I have never done verbal tenancies. My mom taught me from day one, don't do them, da da da. So all this, gee, what happens if I don't have an agreement? Well, then you're kind of dumb. Sorry. And you fall back to whatever your state's landlord-tenant common law verbal lease is, which one of the most popular things that verbal leases and non-existent leases, which is what a verbal lease is, because he said, she said, is you don't have a waiver of notice to quit. We have something in all of our leases called waiver of notice to quit. Waiver of notice to quit effectively says, if you violate a term of this lease, I don't have to tell you about it. I can just go to court. So my rents are due on the first of the month. 12:01 a.m. on the 2nd, like a minute, of course you're not doing this because the magistrate's not there, but a minute past midnight on the 2nd, I can just be waiting at the magistrate's office to file on your butt. You waived my necessity to tell you. Now, do I do that? No. We give you a couple days. If you don't pay us by the 3rd, we might send you a text message. By the 5th, we'll make you a phone call. We're not filing until the 7th or 8th or something. We're giving you some time because it's, life happens. It's fine. But you have that waiver. You have who's responsible for trash, garbage, where does it go, everything else. We had one apartment back when we were first starting out that was our first double, I think. And the downstairs tenant, Kelly goes to collect rent. The downstairs tenant says, I think the marshals are here to arrest the upstairs for a shooting or something. Turns out the marshal was there to arrest the upstairs for a shooting or something. My wife runs over to the courthouse, files eviction. She gets in front of the judge. The judge is like, you have no grounds for this. What do you mean I have no grounds for this? There's nothing saying a criminal can't live in your building. You've got no lease violation here. So my wife literally showed him a picture of dog poo in the yard and the line in the lease that said, you can't have dog poo in your yard. And the tenant said, not my dog. And my wife said, I'm not DNA testing poop. And the judge said, she doesn't have to DNA test poop. It says there can't be any dog poop in the yard. It doesn't say it has to be your dog's poop. They got evicted on dog poop. So you want to have stuff in the lease. I used to say that you want things that every tenant violates in the lease. Not trying to be cruel about it, but yeah, kind of. Because a lot of states are going to something called pay and stay. If they don't pay the rent, if they make good on the non-payment of rent before the end of the court period, the judge can force you to keep them. Well, if they violated something else in your lease, the judge can't force you to keep them. So you want a good written lease that fits your state's laws. This is huge. Pennsylvania state law is, sorry, I'm a little bit itchy today. Pennsylvania state law is what's called a plain language. That's what it is. Which means no theirs, no art styles, no quid pro quos, no fake Latin stuff or real Latin stuff in the case of lawyers. Has to be simple, 6th grade English, basic, little words, normal words, and there are standards for that. And has to be clear and abiding of all laws. But you can have pretty much anything else you want in there. Pennsylvania is a very generous state. It's a common law, contract law state that as long as all the parties have agreed to it, for the most part, the judge is going to go along with it. A few things they won't, but whatever. So you want a good document that everyone's reviewed. You want to give them, and this is national, a lead disclosure statement and a lead pamphlet with every tenancy every time they re-sign a lease. It's a one-page document. The EPA has them available. It basically says, does the landlord have proof that there's lead in the house, or proof that there's no lead in the house, or no knowledge about there being lead in the house? Unless you have a test, your answer is no proof, no knowledge. So you have no knowledge, you have no proof. And I have to look and see if the Home Depot thing came in. It did not yet. Okay, fine. All right, let me just watch over that Home Depot call. You want to have all the new lease. You want to have a lead disclosure statement. You want to have your house rules, whatever those are, as far as smoking on the back porch, no smoking on the property, whatever you have, and whatever your state allows. You want to have a pet policy. Maybe your pet policy is no pets. Maybe your pet policy is we don't care. My pet policy is pets are okay at a certain dollar amount per pet, up to a certain maximum quantity of pets. You want to have a compliance with town ordinance. Many towns have inspections rules. Do them. Don't skip them. People say, I don't want the town in my apartment. Well, first of all, yeah, you do. It's a liability protection for you that the town agreed your apartment was ready to rent. Second of all, yeah, you do, because if you don't, you're violating town law, and your insurance company has a right to tell you to shove it if something goes wrong because you weren't following town law. And the first job of an insurance adjuster when an incident happens is to avoid paying for the incident. So if they can find a loophole, they will. You want to have everything in writing, clear, copies for everybody. Every adult occupant in our apartments has to fill out an application, a written signed application, pay an application fee. We run a full background check. Yada, yada, yada. All that. They also all sign the lease. We use leases that are what's called jointly and severably liable. If the rent is $900 and there's 3 players and you get $600, the 2 players who paid you can't say, well, I paid my third. Jointly and severably liable. I get $900 total. I don't care where it comes from. I get $900. If I don't get $900, I evict all 3 of you. First of all, it puts peer pressure within the environment of the tenancy. But second of all, it avoids, well, great, wait a second. So I have to evict the one that didn't pay. But now the 2 that did pay can no longer afford the apartment. So I'm just going to have another eviction next month. So you want to have it in your lease. Waiver of notice to quit, joint and several liability, whatever your pet policy is, whatever your smoking policy or this policy or that policy. And pretty much from then, you have a quiet enjoyment. First of all, you have what your town ordinances are as far as noise. Before 8 a.m., after 10 p.m., whatever, be a good boy or girl and be quiet. Quiet enjoyment. You're telling them to allow other people to enjoy the property quietly, i.e. the other tenants, and you're promising to do the same for them. 24-hour notice to entry, whatever your notice to entry rules are. Most states, it's 24 hours. I post the door, 24 hours later, I can go in. I text the tenant, 24 hours later. Always in your leases, specify, is texting okay? Is voicemail okay? Is calling okay? Is email okay? What forms of whatever. Opt-in consent is huge nowadays. And everyone has to opt that in separately. Every tenant has to opt that in separately. You post the door, you let them know I'm going in 24 hours. If they reject you, Pennsylvania's state law is you can't enter. If they refuse you, you can evict them for a civil law violation, but they have the right to tell you not to come in. What happens if you post the door, if you give them 24 hours notice and they don't let you in, that varies by state. I had a situation, I posted the door, whatever. It's back when we posted doors. Got there, they refused to let me in. They actually called the police, accused me of trespassing. Yes, I was accused of trespassing on the front porch, common area, of a property that I owned. I called my attorney. He said, Steve, get off. He's like, go home. I'm like, what do you mean go home? He's like, the cops can arrest you for trespassing. I said, I'm standing on the common area. He's like, well, you can stand on the common area. He said, but you can't force your way in. Criminal law says in Pennsylvania, it's castle doctrine. Castle doctrine means it's their castle. They make the doctrine. They could shoot me if I go in. They can have me arrested. I said, okay, I said, Angelo, what should I do? He's like, it's 2:30. Go to the magistrate and file eviction on them. They violated the lease by not letting you in, but don't enter the building. So you want to have what your notification requirements are. You want to have, I have things like, I had something called appearance of illegal activity after the shooting at the Glass Bar story I told you earlier, that if it smelled like illegal activity, looked like whatever, I could go to the judge and let the judge sort it out. Judges eventually told us they didn't like that clause, so we took it out, but whatever. You want to have anything in your lease, and what you'll find is you'll download a lease. You'll take our lease, somebody else's lease, start at 4 pages, and then 10 years later, it's 20 pages, because every time something bad goes wrong. I have something in our lease that says, if we have evidence that the utilities have been shut off, disconnected, we have the right to go in and drain the apartment. Why? Because I was driving by one of my buildings one day and I saw a UGI gas company shut-off notice. Okay, well, it's 3 degrees out. Having gas means having heat. Having heat means not having freezing pipes. I have a shut-off notice. I peek in the windows. They're gone. They've moved out. They're not there. So that I go in, I shut everything down, I, drain the pipes, do whatever I'm going to do. Now in my lease, it says if I have reason to believe your utilities are off, I'm going to drain the building right away. And you're going to pay me $1,000 to refill it with water because I'm not going to risk having that other situation. Thankfully, never faced that again. So how to screen your tenants, how to decide what your tenants should be or should do or whatever, and who they should be, what your rules are for your tenancies. That's the second thing. What your policies are on pets, what your policies are on late payments and so forth. And the biggest policy on late payments is don't let it go long. Don't let it drag out. I've been to court and I've seen people 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 months behind on rent. First of all, how are you continuing to pay for a building? Like that's like COVID shutdown before COVID shutdown. Second of all, why? Do you really think the person that couldn't pay $500 a month in rent, you let them go 10 months and they can pay $5,000? They haven't become a more highly paid person in those 10 months. You're just digging your own grave. I got lots and lots and lots of judgments from judges saying the tenants owe me money. I don't have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of tenants who paid me back. I think I have 2 in 15, 16 years of doing this. So don't let them go that long. Week, 2 weeks, then you start rattling sabers. Certainly not into the second month. And this is, again, why you want to be good with your code officers. You want to be good with your inspections. You want to be good with your judges. You want to be good with your neighbors. You want to have your neighbors all have your phone number. You see something funny going on in my building, call me. You want to, when the city calls you or the city writes you up, you want to be on top of that, communicate, hey, Ed, health department Ed, hey, Ed, I just got the letter. I don't get letters anymore. I just get phone calls, but in the beginning, I just got the letter. I'm going over today to deal with that issue. Just want to let you know I'm sorry. Didn't know about it. Boom. Go over, take care of it, email Ed a picture, whatever. It's been taken care of. Bureaucrats work by the complaint system. If you're the one they're getting complained about, guess who they're paying attention to? If you're the one that's always proactive or always there to respond to their needs, guess who they're helping out? Also, bringing your code officers in on their inspection cycles, getting to know them, being comfortable with them. You can't even give them a bottle of water nowadays. Like that, I've got one code officer, used to get bottles of wine to every year, and after a while, he's like, you can't do that. And then I hand him a bottle of water. He's like, I can't even take a bottle of water. But he called, I answered right there. Everything was taken care of. It was right. It was right. I don't bring my inspectors in until I've walked through the building and made sure it's going to pass. I might miss something, but at least whatever. Don't waste their time. Why? Because you're going to have a situation where you're going to need them. I had a situation, we had an et al. Eviction, which is an et al., E-T-A-L, which is Latin for and everybody else. So we named the tenant we knew. We knew there was somebody, hold on. This is the Home Depot one. We knew there was somebody else in the building, et al. Eviction. Constable said, I don't do et al. I evict the named party. So they got rid of the named party. Now I'm still stuck with some boyfriend slug, whoever he was on the couch, or probably not the couch, but whatever. He's in there. But I noticed that the utilities were off, which means utilities are off. There's no gas, means there's no hot water, means it's legally not a habitable building. So I called my code officer. I said, I got this situation. She's like, I'll come over and shut it down. I said, well, what's that mean for me? She's like, she said, so I didn't have hot water. It was the middle of the summer. Didn't have hot water. So it's not a habitable building in that city without hot water. They were responsible for the hot water. They were responsible for the utility that drove the hot water, more specifically. She came over, she posted the door. She's like, listen, all you do is you get the gas turned back on. I come back over, I turn the building back on. She's like, this is not a negative thing for you. And I've used that trick 3 times to get 3 different bad tenants out of apartments who had utilities fail. Now, here's where that goes the other way. I had a situation where tenant was behind on the rent. She had 24 cats in a 600 square foot apartment. Not a good day. And I'm there having a conversation with her about getting out. And she's like, you can't evict me. I have an electrical problem. I said, oh, you do? I've got my truck right there. Let's go fix it. Oh, I'm not letting you in. So immediately I'm on the phone with the building inspector. You do this long enough, you have everyone's cell phone number. Hey, Harry. And Harry and I were not, Harry and I didn't see eye to eye a lot, but he's my inspector. Whatever. Harry, okay, fine. He's like, Steve, go home. Like, what do you mean go home? He's like, go home and file an eviction. I'm like, why? There's an electrical problem. He said, Steve, I come over there. I find out there actually is an electrical problem. You're putting this lady up in a hotel because it's your job to keep the electrical safe. I said, but Harry, she won't let me in to fix it. He said, she doesn't have to let you in to fix it. He said, but if she invites me in and I find it, it's your problem. So you got to look carefully when you call the code officer about what you call them for. But at the same time, what I did do, and I said, Harry, I said, what I did do is I'm like, how do I protect myself? He's like, I'm no lawyer. He's like, but have her sign that you offered to repair and she refused you, which she was absolutely dumb enough to do. So if a utility is your problem, if a habitability failure is your problem, you could end up having to keep them up in a hotel. So to recap, 3 times the rent, clean background, clean landlord, check them out, be careful who you let into your units. Second, stay in touch with them, stay visible, visit your property once a month, have someone visit your property once a month. Do something to make sure that you're checking on your property and to make sure that the town knows that you're taking care of your property. Respond to your tenants' complaints. They can be a pain in the butt, okay? But it's their home. Make them feel comfortable. If they complain about an issue and it's something you can fix it. If there's a reason it doesn't make sense to fix, fine. We had a woman in a very low rent apartment last week. There were some weak spots in the floor. We fixed the weak spots in the floor. And she said, well, now my floor looks funny. And we went to the owner of the building and said, you want to fix this? He's like, I can't afford to fix it at that rent. And so we told the woman, you're getting a $1,200 a month apartment for $600 a month. There's no money to fix the cosmetic. Personally, I don't do 1-year leases anymore. Personally, I do month-to-month automatically renewable leases. Why? COVID-19 shutdown. Going into COVID, we only had 1 COVID deadbeat, and we had 25 kids in sober houses at the time. So we even had addicts paying their rent. Maybe not all of it, but they were making an attempt. We had 1 household of not essential workers, i.e. healthcare, essential workers, i.e. Walmart, who decided not to pay their rent. Now, they moved into a completely renovated house, new furnace, new water heater, new this, new that, new blah, blah, blah. It's brand new. It was an old building, but a brand new house. And as soon as COVID started, they stopped paying. We get 6 months in, September-ish. They call us up, and this is wrong with the sewer, and this is wrong with this is wrong with that, this is wrong with the other thing. All these things are wrong. And we said, well, I'm not sure what we can do about that. Well, what do you mean? Well, you owe us $7,000 in rent. Yeah, well, we don't have any money. She said, well, you personally have money. I said, the company doesn't have any money to pay this because you're $7,000 in rent behind. And so, which I had talked to my lawyer, and he's like, that's the answer. The company doesn't have the money. You don't have to personally take it out of your pocket. There's something in Pennsylvania called repair and deduct. I said, great. Call whoever you want, get it repaired, pay them, and that amount you pay to fix it comes off what you owe me in rent. I'm not arguing these things are wrong. I'm not arguing you should have these problems. I'm just saying that they're problems, but there's nothing to do about them. And of course, we were still under COVID rules, so going into apartments was weird. It was all weird. Long story short, she called the city inspector and complained because these were health code violations. There was a failure in the sewer system, potentially, for all I was told. So I went and I met the code officer there as requested. He condemned the building, which means everybody out right away. Now, it meant a lot of pain for me later. Condemned, non-habitable is a low standard. That's what like having utility shut off was. Condemned is a higher standard. But I had a vacant building. I actually thanked him. Now, I didn't realize how much of a pain in the butt the condemned was going to be. But maybe I wouldn't thank him if I knew that. But they were gone. And they owed me all this money. And this is where the gray area came in. They owed me all this money. I technically still owe them a place to live because it wasn't legal to evict them during COVID. So we went through this whole thing of I was supposed to rent them a hotel room. I said pay and deduct. We went through this back and forth, and finally I ended up paying them something, and I ended up paying them $2,000, and they ended up owing me $12,000, and they never paid it. But that's why I do 30 or 60-day automatically renewable leases, because if it had been an automatically renewable lease, COVID said I couldn't evict them for non-payment. COVID never said I had to automatically extend their lease whenever it ended. I could simply say, I'm not renewing you. I just don't feel like renewing you, or I feel like moving my daughter in there, or I think it's a great place to keep my pet Ross. I don't have to tell you in Pennsylvania. I don't have to tell you why I'm not renewing you. I'm not renewing you. So I do short leases. So background check, proper screening, proper documentation on your tenants. Now, comes to collecting rents. We don't do cash collections anymore. We did it for years, and oh my God, it was horrible. Because your cash payers, they don't come to you usually. Now I have an office and whatever. But I work out of my house. I'm not letting you know what my house is. No. And so we were chasing them, and we'd show up, and I only have $100. Come back tomorrow. It was just hugely time consuming. I started charging for pickups, and it just never became a good thing. So we have now a pretty good system. They can digitally pay. They can pay by check. They can pay by money order. They can pay by Venmo. They can pay by whatever. And we also remember this thing called Pay Near Me, Nearby Me. I think Pay Near Me. They can pay at every Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid, whatever. Literally over the counter. Boom. They get a receipt. They pay a couple buck fee. Boom. So I'm like, do that. Don't do this. Have that spelled out in your lease. Have them initial. And initial. And if you change something in your lease, if you rewrite something, initial. Everybody initials. That way, if you handwrite it and there's initials around it, the judge can say, well, you both initialed it. If there's no initials around it, the judge says, well, when was that changed? And everyone gets copies. But you want to have it spelled out how they pay their rent, what the late fees are. We have a late fee that's $50 after 5 days, $10 a day after that. That's like something like that. And $10 a day after that for the first week, and then it goes up to like $20. It goes to an absurd number. Like by the end of the month, it's like $75 a day. And there is no way that any judge would or should enforce that, but the numbers get scary. Another landlord I know does it the other way. He's like, oh, okay, well, I want $700 for the apartment. The rent on paper is $1,000 and a $300 deduction if you pay on time. So instead of charging a late fee, he goes the other way. Whatever. Have that laid out. Then I know we're kind of wrapping toward the end of the hour. Then you come to the end of the lease, the end of the hour, the end of the lease, the move out time. We have 60-day notice either way. They tell me they have to tell me before 60 days if they're not renewing or they're renewing, vice versa. Stick to that. That's in writing. And our interpretation of Pennsylvania law, by the way, people say 60 days from the day I tell you. No. If I tell you on the 2nd of the month, that 60 days is from the following 1st of the month. It's from the next rent due date. So I tell you on August 29th that I want you gone, you're gone by the end of September. I tell you on September 2nd I want you gone, you're gone by the end of October. Watch your dates. Here's the other date you really, really, really should watch. You really should watch your security deposit settlement statement date. First of all, always take a security deposit of some kind and monitor it. It does not get used for rent. It does not get used for anything during the operational term of the lease unless everyone signs. But it does not get used for rent. It is just, you want it security deposit. It's the carrot that says leave the place empty and clean and in good condition when you leave. If you give up that, where are they hurt by? Now, yes, you can get a judgment against them. You can file a lien. Eventually, if they become a good boy or girl and they want a house or a car and a loan, they're going to find the lien. Okay, there's that. Has never worked for me, but it's there. But 30 days in this Pennsylvania law, from the day they move out or the end of the lease, whichever is soonest. So if they're supposed to move out by the July 31st, but they move out on July 15th, it's 30 days from July 15th. Now, I could be overly careful on this. I may be wrong technically, but here's where you're not wrong by being overly careful. 31 days after that date, win, lose, or draw, whatever the damages are, the landlord owes the tenant three times, triple damages. So if you have a $1,000 security deposit and they move out at the end of July, and the first week of September, you mail them a security deposit settlement statement, you better mail them a $3,000 check with it. You mail it August 29th, you could, whatever the statement says is what you send them for the balance. So you don't want to miss that security deposit settlement statement. And when you send them the settlement statement, you're not just saying, yeah, $700 security deposit, I'm keeping it. You're saying, why are you keeping it? I'm keeping it because you peed on the rug. I'm keeping it because you left me with couches. I'm keeping it because this bill, that bill, that bill, that bill, that bill. Because legally, security deposits, they're in your account, but they belong to the tenant. It's the tenant's money. There's lots of other rules about them being kept in separate accounts. Sometimes accounts per apartment or per ownership or per building. There's also lots of rules about interest payments on security deposit settlement. I'm going to give you a little rough outline of that. And the first year is a little different. The first year, I don't think you have to pay interest payments. The second year and forward, you have to pay the interest the bank pays you on their money, minus the state has a regulated cost fee, I guess, that you're allowed to charge against the interest, not against the principal. They give you $1,000. They're there for 25 years. You're giving them $1,000 back. It's not, oh, we made a quarter point interest, but I'm allowed to charge you 1 point in fees, so therefore you're getting less than $1,000. No, their $1,000 is safe. That is their money. You're simply holding it. But if interest is a point, 1%, and fees are allowed to be a point, 1%, then you say, listen, your interest accrued was this many pennies, but the fees I'm allowed to charge are this many pennies, and there's no pennies left. Here's your $1,000. You want to be careful with this because the most dangerous animal in landlording is the legal aid attorney, or what I call the career tenant. The attorney obviously is the one the career tenant hires, but they know the game better than you do. They know the game better than I do. They know where the loopholes are. They're the ones that will run the stings. They're the ones that will say, you should have done X, Y, Z. They're the ones that will say you were 24 hours late in giving my security deposit settlement statement. You want to be careful. You want to be clear. You want to know your state laws. I am a broker, real estate broker. I am a landlord. I am a wholesaler. I am not a lawyer. I know the laws in Pennsylvania mostly through experience. And of course, being trained in them slightly, because as a broker, you're not trained on them very much. And that comes to my last piece of advice. If you are serious about landlording, take someone's course, someone good. Take my course. I'm great. There's also Institute of Real Estate Management has an accredited real estate manager course, which I actually took so many lifetimes ago. And keep up with your training. Keep up with that. Laws change. But you really want to make sure you understand what you're doing. Also, everything in writing. When I have a conversation with a tenant, I text a follow up. Hey, this is what we talked about. Not, do you agree? This is what we talked about. This is what we talked about. Please let me know if you don't agree. Because no answer then is they must have agreed. Screenshot stuff when necessary. I use Google Voice, so it never goes away. It's always in Google. Fine, let Google have some more data. I like it there. Everything is in writing. Everything is clear. Don't let it be, don't leave a note with the dog. Basically, make sure it's really upfront and clear. So wrap it up. Text any messages, any questions, 570-798-7051. Please get your friends to join the mastermind. We are always looking for new members. We are offering affiliate fees of 30%. So the $300 a year, which will be going to which will be going up next year. I don't know what it's going to go to, but it'll be going up. Probably something like 500. I'd like to go to 900. You want to give me that? I'll take it. But get your friends on the Asset Mastermind. Take some of our other classes. Come to our real estate investor meetups, and we'll see you soon. Thanks. Bye.